Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 139. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and founder of Kids Comic Unite, Janna Morishima. Janna,
Hi.
how are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to be here.
Right. You know what? And like, I've been looking forward to this interview. I've been a huge fan. Following it, I'm a member of Kids Comic Unite. I've been there for about a year, and I am constantly in shock and awe and delight to see all that information that is available for people that are a member of Kids Comic Unite. And I absolutely recommend anybody who's listening, all of our authors and storytellers and artists that listen to the podcast or check out the video. Please definitely go to Kids Comic Unite and join that amazingly supportive group with so much information to share. So that was my plug. So thank you very much, Janna. No kidding. So you have a website too as an agent, but I really want folks to listen to kind of get a background on how you created Kids Comics Unite, and what the direction is that you're taking it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I started it originally as a meetup. It was a meetup in December 2019. We had our first meeting, and it was maybe 12 or 14 people who came to the first meeting at a little cafe in the Lower East Side in New York City. And we had a speaker. We hung around afterwards and talked about comics. And there's Patrick. Yay! And then we had our second meetup in February of 2020. And then, as you know, the lockdown happened because of coronavirus in March of 2020. And luckily, I had found out about this platform called Mighty Networks. Okay. So I had actually created this online kind of accompaniment to the meetup because I thought, it would be nice for us to be able to hang out online. Of course, if it had happened more recently, maybe I would have created a Discord. Who knows? But at the time, I don't even know if Discord was around. Maybe it was. But anyway, I just stumbled across Mighty Networks, so it happens to be a Mighty Networks. One thing to know about me is I don't use Facebook, so that was the big thing for me. Was it's not Facebook, so yeah, I created this online thing, and then when the lockdown happened, I thought to myself, well, I was freaked out. Everybody was freaked out, and I thought maybe what I should do is just start showing up for a weekly office hour on the Mighty Network, and then we can all just, instead of having a more formal meeting where we have a speaker or whatever, we'll just get together and talk. It could be about comics, or it could be about like how we're super stressed out. It doesn't matter. Right. So I started doing that, and people loved it so much. And that's when Kids Comics Unite started to grow. So people started inviting other people, and I just kept doing these weekly meetings. And then meanwhile, personally, I was very financially affected by the pandemic because my husband is a wedding photographer.
Oh, wow.
And I had just started my business, so I really wasn't earning practically anything yet as an agent. So I was in dire straits, and I decided that I would launch a course inside of Kids Comics Unite in order to make money. So it was honestly very back against the wall kind of situation. So I did, but it ended up being so much fun. I launched the course. I think we had about 25 or 26 students the first time I taught it, which was the summer of 2020. And it was fantastic. I loved it. The community kept growing. And that's when I started to realize, oh, wow, this is actually more than just a meetup. This is an actual online community that has a lot of potential. So I kept putting energy into it, and it kept growing. And now it's much more than just me. I have a team of people. Patrick was an intern. He was watching. He made a comment earlier, and so I have 3 freelancers who are working with me now. I have an assistant teacher, or not. She's not an. I wouldn't even call her an assistant teacher. I'd call her a co-teacher.
Right.
So we are going to be teaching this course, which is called Kids Comics Intensive, for the 3rd time, starting in March. And my co-instructor Rivka, she is teaching the whole craft and comics technique session of the course. So it's we have tons of stuff going on. I can't even. I mean, I should be more methodical about how I am explaining everything, but it's pretty crazy.
So you brought up the point of like it kind of was the genesis of it happened pre-pandemic, but it really kind of grew because of the pandemic. Now, let me my question is the old adage of like, necessity is a mother of invention. So were you surprised that there was a hole that needed to be filled within the comics culture that Kids Comic United was able to fill, that you were surprised that didn't exist beforehand?
Well, I wasn't surprised that there was a hole when it came to kids comics creators.
Right.
I knew that there was, which is one of the reasons I wanted to be an agent specializing in that area.
Right.
But I was surprised by how rapidly this online community grew, because I had never run an online community before. So I was experimenting a lot and, reading constantly because I enjoy it, So I do it because I love hanging out with people and talking about comics. And I felt like the more I meet people, the more excited I am to meet even more people, because I've just gotten to know so many amazing people through Kids Comics Unite. It's just astounding. I feel like we are just scratching the surface, because we have about, I know we have more than 1,200 members right now.
Wow.
Most of them are in the United States, but there's a lot who are from other places. I think with the last time I looked at the list of members, there were more than 35 different countries represented among members. But yeah, it's just, there's so many talented people everywhere around the world. And it's so exciting that now, in the age we live in, we can connect with people from anywhere.
Right. Now, so you bring up the point about kids comics, and like, is there? I'm curious, based off of your experience and your in what you've seen, is kids comics, like young adult graphic novels, is that growing because of the advent of technology, or despite the advent of accessible technology?
Well, I think it was growing. Well, I don't know exactly what you mean by the technology.
So, like for instance, that we've seen a lot of things of like, yeah, the art in itself has seemed, has grown because it's more accessible for people to, create their own work. But we see people more geared towards interactive medias of video games and whatnot. We're getting back to the analog, the analog active entertainment, not passive entertainment like radio or TV, but active entertainment where it doesn't keep going unless you actively partake in that piece of art. That do you see like the physicalness of being able to read a book, and now especially that the growth of the growth of as we say, like kids comics, is that growing? Do you see, I guess my first question should ask you, because is like, do you see a growth in youth related graphic novels and kids comics?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I see a growth in comics in general. And I think it's happening in all categories. I think it's happening for kids. I think it's happening for teens. I think it's happening for adults. I'm a person who got involved in comics because there really was practically nothing in comics for a reader like me, even though I love the comics format, but there wasn't much it's genres that I'm interested in. When I first started, which was a long time ago, I first started getting involved in comics publishing when I was at Scholastic in about 2004, I guess. So at that time, it was a completely different picture than it is right now.
Mm.
So I think that yes, comics is growing. I think it's growing in every genre, in every category, for every demographic.
And that's a point, like you said, like the looking at comics as a medium instead of a genre, because usually, as you mentioned, pre 2004 era, when people heard comics, they thought of superheroes,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even a small population people would think of Archie than anything
Mm-hmm.
else. So as you say now, looking at it, how active do you see that happening with kids comics, and just like the comic medium becoming a medium instead of a specific genre, as you mentioned, that people are reading it more and more and more. What's your where do you see it in the next 5 years?
Well, continued growth, I think. I think the web comics scene is going crazy right now with platforms like Webtoon and Top Us. I mean, there's also Comixology, which is their audience, I would say, is more similar to that audience that already existed for comics
Right.
a long time ago. But I think though all those online comics is just going to continue to grow. And I think for book publishers, they're continuing to publish graphic novels. And so they're just feeding off each other. And I believe that that's going to continue. I don't see any signs it's going to slow down or stop at all.
And you worked a bit, if I'm looking, you worked a bit with Diamond Distributors as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're classically known for distributing your superhero comics.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see while you were there that there was an increase as a pie chart of how much percentage of it is more non-superhero related? Was that growing while you were there?
Yeah, it was. Back when I worked at Diamond, part of my job, I think I was hired to try to convince comics publishers to pay more attention to what they call the all ages market, which I don't like to say. But yeah, the children's market, or children's or young adult. So I had mixed success there, I would say, but I think it was because it was a little bit early, and some of the publishers I was talking to maybe weren't quite there yet in terms of what they wanted to focus on. But on the other hand, there were other publishers who were totally excited about it. So Oni Press is a comics publisher that's always done a really great job, I think, in kids and teen publishing. And then while I was at Diamond, I helped launch Toon Books, which is helmed by Francoise Mouly. And there was an announcement recently that Toon Books was brought on board by Astor House, which is a medium-sized publishing company, book publishing company. So I guess my answer about what was going on when I was at Diamond is that it was mixed. So, but I think now things have changed. A lot of those publishers where I maybe felt like I was banging my head against the wall a little bit back then, now they're different. Things have changed a lot.
Right. And so, where would somebody? Because the challenge of when you're thinking about the comic book distribution side of things is when you have your independent mom and pop comic book shops,
Mm-hmm.
they are it'd be a challenge to find, as you said earlier, the all ages comics, because it's mostly just your Image, your DC, and your Marvel. Where would somebody who's listening, like a parent or somebody, saying, "Hey, where can I find like an all ages comic book? Where would be the best, most accessible place for someone to find those?"
A comic book, or just
an all ages? Yeah.
Comics, I mean a comic book shop, basically.
Right.
Yeah, but a graphic novel, I would say your independent bookstore or Barnes and Noble or Amazon, all the same places you would go to buy any children's book.
Right. And where do you feel, and what's your opinion on the fact that I was talking to somebody, an author the other day, about how the Dewey Decimal System in a way is kind of an outdated point where
Mhm.
if you have a graphic novel about if you have a graphic novel that's about the Civil War. We had Scott Chandler on a few
Mhm.
days, and he had this thing about a jazz musician. He had a really good book about a graphic novel about jazz musician.
Mhm.
Um, but that would be placed in the graphic novel section, not in the musical history section of a
Mhm.
library. What's your thoughts on having some of these updated,
Mhm.
the updated places where you can actually find graphic novels as a medium and not necessarily a genre?
Well, that's been a huge and ongoing topic of discussion, I think, among librarians for a long time. And librarians handle it differently. Some librarians do pull out all the graphic novels and shelve them just separately, in their own section. Sometimes they intershelve them according to genre or subject. Sometimes I can't remember what the Dewey Decimal Code is for the graphic novels. I think the minority of people would just put them in that area of the library. Um, it's something. I mean, yeah, it's something librarians have been talking about for a long time, and it's a topic of passionate debate.
Right. I mean, because also you as being a fierce advocate of, as you say, is like the graphic novel is, how much of it is like, just kind of keep, you're instrumental and important in kind of beating that drum to say, as you're saying, this is a graphic novel isn't a genre, it's a medium. So
Mhm.
put where the story goes, that should be where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us a bit about too is like what would what do you where do you see like Kids Comic Unite? Where do you see um with the resources? Like if somebody just jumps right in and says, "Hey, you know what? I want to learn more about this."
Hmm.
What's kind of your back of the book? I'm
Hmm.
mixing my metaphors here on what Kids Comic United is now.
Okay, well, I can say that we are offering a free masterclass on February 24th,
Okay.
which is called Write, Draw, Publish, Sell Your Graphic Novel. So if you join the community and then you go to the event section, there is an event listing for it, and you can RSVP. It's free. I think it's at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, February 24th. It'll be taught by me and my co-instructor Rivka, and we will be talking about kind of the basics, like ABC basics of how to get started with your kids comics career. And that'll be super fun. And it's our way of launching the intensive course. So it's
Okay.
kind of a preview of what we teach much more in depth during the intensive course. But beyond that, in terms of resources, I would say that you kind of part of the reason Kids Comics Unite exists is because there's a lot of resources about how to do your children's book,
Right.
and then there's a lot of resources on how to create a comic.
Right.
But kind of putting those two together is what we try to do in Kids Comics Unite. So for understanding the children's book publishing community, there's no organization I could recommend more highly than Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. It's a fantastic organization. Any person who wants to write professionally or draw professionally for kids should be a member of SCBWI, and they offer tons and tons of classes. So you can sign up through that. And then in terms of resources for comics creators, it's a little more fragmented, but there's a lot of small schools like Sequential Artist Workshop or the school in Vermont. Uh,
CCS. Yeah.
yeah, CCS.
Yeah.
There's a workshop in Alaska, the Alaska Robotics Camp, which is actually a comics summer workshop. So those are just a few resources, and then there's books like the books by Scott McCloud or Jessica Abel and Matt Madden. I know I'm forgetting, but so basically, there's a lot of places to go. Um, but I would say Kids Comics Unite is the place where we try to reunite those two worlds in one
Right.
place.
So we might have an author on here who's a children's book author who might be gonna, and then she said, um, Janna, I don't know if I have, maybe they're asking, I don't know if I have a children's book or a kids comic.
Mm-hmm.
How can I tell if I
Mm-hmm.
have a comic or a children's book?
Well, well, a comic, generally speaking, is going to be told in panels.
Right.
That's with panels with speech balloons. There are definitely hybrid books that are sort of like illustrated prose, but with comics elements in them. So maybe the illustrations have speech balloons, but they're not done in panel format.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine too. It any format is okay. I think people are just pushing the limit in terms of format these days, and that's super exciting. And that's what editors are looking for. They're looking for real creativity in terms of visual storytelling. So what format you're telling it in doesn't matter as long as you do it well.
Right.
And then when you describe it to people, it does help if you use the right terms.
Right.
So if you're doing a picture book, call it a picture book. If it's a graphic novel, call it a graphic novel. If it's hybrid, you know, hybrid chapter book with comics elements, you can call it that.
Right. And what are some of the things that you've noticed through Kids Comic Unite that seems to, because I love the fact that you have these different groups, you have different topics. You got,
Mm-hmm.
technical Thursdays, show your
Mm-hmm.
work Saturdays. There's like all these different,
Mm-hmm.
you proactively, what I love about what you've been doing is that you proactively make sure people are connected and people are following,
Mm-hmm.
conversations. What are some of the things that you were kind of surprised about, that the conversations seem to gravitate more towards a particular topic that kind of surprised you at first? Like, wow, I didn't know this was something that everybody seems to be wanting to learn more about.
I'm not sure. I don't know if I can think of something that surprised me. I have seen something that crops up again and again and again, which is, what if you're just a writer and you're not an artist? Can get your graphic novel published? And I feel like, yes, the answer is yes, you can, but I would also say it is harder than if you either can do the art yourself, or if you already have a partner who's doing the art with you, um, which is different from the world of picture books. Picture book authors can sell their manuscripts easily. It's not a problem at all. It happens all the time that you sell a picture book manuscript and then the publisher matches you with an artist. When it's comics, it's a little different unless you're dealing with a comics publisher like Boom Studios or IDW or Oni Press or one of those places. They are more used to putting together creative teams. Um, if you're trying to sell it to a book publisher, it does happen for sure, but it's a little bit harder. And so that's it's a I don't have an easy answer for people who ask me that question, and so I feel like I'm always noodling it around in my head and trying to think of what I can say that's helpful. I mean, what I would say about Kids Comics Unite is that we are working on a website for Kids Comics Unite. So it's not going to be just an online community. It will be an actual public website with resources. And one of the things that the website will eventually have is going to be a talent showcase. So artists will be able to show their work and kind of like a portfolio page, so people can connect with each other even more easily. They'll be able to search by genre or age level or style of art, things like that.
Right. And what about some, questions about, as well as, like, there's how agnostic is the group about, self-publish versus finding an agent and things like
Mhm.
that?
Oh, the question of self-publishing versus traditional publishing. That's a
Right.
fun one. um, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. I think
Right.
I'm a big proponent of both ways. I think
Right.
I'm an agent, so my livelihood is tied to selling projects to traditional publishers, but I am a huge fan of well executed self-publishing projects. So I think it's a great way to go if you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you are willing to put in the work, because it is a huge amount of work,
Right.
and also willing to create your own team. I don't think it's possible to do it well on your own. You really need some help. Um, and I do think the children's book market is a little bit of its own special beast. It's definitely harder to self-publish in children's books than it is in just as an adult, publishing like romance, say, or mystery or something like that. Because when you're dealing with the children's book market, you're actually dealing with two audiences. There's the child, who's the actual reader of the book, but there's also the person who buys it or who gives it to the child, whether that's a librarian or a parent or a teacher, or there's some gatekeeper who's in between the end user and you as the creator creating the project. And so as a creator, you have to be able to make sure that those gatekeeper people, they get as excited about your project as the end user does. So that it makes it complicated.
Right. Yeah. It's the example of like, yeah, like a marketing person talking about when you make, ad for dog food, the dogs don't know
Yeah.
what so it's like,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
And so what about, and because you did mention that yourself, is like in a previous interview, you said like, don't do everything by yourself. It's a lot of work. How important do you say when you talk to folks about how important an editor is when it comes to writing out a children's book, a children's comic?
Oh, I think editors are fantastic and essential. They're the unsung heroes. I think if you're just starting out, you could start with a critique group. I think a critique group is a fantastic thing to have in the beginning, and then even throughout your career, honestly. When you get started and maybe you don't have the funds to pay for a freelance editor, or you're just not there yet, your critique group is the place where you go to get feedback and to be part of a community and improve your work. And then once you get a little further along and you're ready to start submitting to agents or to publishers, I always think it's a great idea to hire a freelance editor to look at your pitch before you show it to agents and editors, because a lot of times, honestly, I don't want to say you only get one shot, but if you show your pitch to an agent or an editor and they reject it, it's a lot harder to go back again with a revised pitch. So you want to go with something that's as strong as possible.
Right. And yeah, and with that said, as you mentioned, how much do you see folks asking, the questions of like, how much not cross pollination you see of like prose writers trying to write comic scripts, or comic writers trying to write prose scripts, and how much feedback how important is that to for that access of like that critique group to say this isn't the right format? Or do you hear people say, have you thought about prose on this? Or
Right. I do think that there's a lot of people who float between those worlds, but I would say with a critique group, if you are really focusing on graphic novels, it's really good to have a critique group of people who understand graphic novels. Because if you're in a critique group with a bunch of picture book writers or prose novelists, understanding a graphic novel script is different than reading a prose novel, and it can be, I don't know. I do think it's very helpful to have a group of people who really understand the format that you're trying to create for. And that's, again, another reason why Kids Comics Unite exists, because we do try to help people find critique partners or critique groups specific to kids comics.
And plus the community building, I think it's another good tip and advice is like, don't come in cold, create an environment, participate in helping others and giving feedback before going in and doing it cold first. So
yeah. And the people who are starting out with you, you'll find over time that some of those people, they will succeed, and it's really like everybody's helping each other, succeed together. So you never know who's going to give you a lucky break, somebody that you met and you exchanged some feedback with. Maybe 2 years down the road, you reach out and they're like, oh, I think my agent would like this, and they pass it along. It happens much more often, I think, than people realize.
Right. And as you said, like this, you right now it's over 1,000. Like we said,
Yeah.
1,200 people in the group. Where have you seen that the growth happen? Do you see also? Is it like a steady increase of folks, or has it leveled off, or where do you see the
I
numbers?
think it tends to grow a lot when we do a launch of a program. So in September of last year, we launched this workshop called Pitchcraft, where we were focusing for one Saturday, just really everything you need to know about pitching your graphic novel to agents and publishers. It was like a lesson and then a live critique session and an exercise and stuff like that. So when we launched that workshop, we did get a big influx of people. And right now we're gearing up for another big launch because we're doing the intensive class for the third time. So we're doing the free master class. We haven't sent out the press releases yet. They're going to be going out next week. So once we do that, I expect there to be another big flood of new people.
So I'm kind of curious, in your line of work, do you see where, like flower sales go up during, Valentine's Day? Is there a time of year where you just see an influx of creative endeavors that seem to pop up, or is it kind of like all year round?
Well, I would say that the publishing world is very cyclical.
Okay.
Publishing tends to be totally dead during the month of December and the month of August. So generally, agents don't like to go out with submissions during maybe July or November, December. So people tend to gear up for big waves of submissions to publishers in the sort of September, October period. And then I would say the spring, like January through May. Those would be two big periods for really getting creative stuff out the door and showing it to publishers.
And is that's a good piece of advice. So you would say, like, it's everything's kind of based off of skill, networking, and serendipity. So making sure that if you're talking to folks that are looking to get their books published, do it within those.
Yeah, don't try to do anything in August, and don't try to do anything in December.
Would you say with your knowledge of say like Kickstarter platforms and like crowdfunding platforms, would that translate at that point as well?
Oh, honestly, I don't know. That it might not be the case with Kickstarter. That's a really good question, and I feel like maybe we actually had Oriana Lepkart, who is she's the Kickstarter specialist in comics. She came and did an event for Kids Comics Studio, which is the membership program inside of Kids Comics Unite, and she talked a lot about all those nitty gritties of running your crowdfunding campaign. And I feel like she said something about it, but I don't remember what it was. But at any rate, we do have a video inside of Kids Comics Studio that is about that topic.
No, because you did mention that you having that, and there is you get just from the from the funding platform that you have for Kids Comic Unite. As you said, there are some classes that charge. Is there a membership to being a part of Kids Comic Unite?
Kids Comics Unite is free, so you can join the community for free, and you can participate, in the activity feed. And we do offer some free events. I would say it ends up being like once every other month or so we do a free event. But if you really want more, we have a program called Kids Comic Studio where we meet every single week. It's sort of like the much improved version of what I started back when I first launched Kids Comics Unite during the pandemic. So we have what we call lunch and learns. Every single Wednesday, we have somebody come in and do a workshop about a whole myriad of different topics. Sometimes it's super technical, like Clip Studio Paint, how to do blah, 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 or like what you need to know about your Twitter account and promoting your book. And then sometimes they're more general, how to work with a freelance editor, for instance, things like that. And then we have a book club, we have office hours, we curate critique groups, and we do industry interviews with kind of luminaries in the field. So it's super awesome. I highly recommend, if you really want to get serious, Kids Comic Studio is great. It's $39 a month. It's a monthly membership, and it can be canceled at any time. So you can join it and then leave and then come back, and
Right.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one paid program, and then the other paid program is the Kids Comics Intensive.
Right. You know, and that price is amazing. Like 39. Like that's like getting lunch someplace. It's not. It's a very reasonable price. And as you said, it's like you have access to so much information that would
Yeah,
cost
yeah.
you so much more than anywhere else.
I honestly love Kids Comic Studio because since we meet every single week, we get to know each other,
Right.
and people are sometimes really honest and raw especially during the office hours conversations that we have. We talk about each other's work. We answer. We try to help each other out, basically. Um, so I highly recommend it. I just think
Right.
it's really awesome.
Right.
I mean, I created it, so of course I think it's awesome.
And so how many? So for that for the sake of saying, for instance, once would you still get the intimacy of getting so much feedback and advice if somebody joined the Kid Comic Studio, if there's 500 people, 100, like how much?
Yeah,
Again,
that's a
what's
good. I
yeah,
think that's a great question, and at this point, we haven't reached that point yet. I mean, I think we have 87 members of Kids Comic Studio, and at any given event, there's usually anywhere between at the small side maybe 4 or 5 people, and at the
mm,
larger side maybe 60 at the most.
right,
So yeah, if it's 60 people, that's a lot, but because we all have gotten to know each other, I feel like so far it hasn't felt that people get lost. There always is time for Q&A, and I haven't gotten that feeling that people feel like it's too big yet.
right,
It is possible it'll get to a size where we need to think about ways to make it to so people have that sense of intimacy again, because I agree with you, it's super important.
right.
And we would definitely consider, maybe having breakout sessions. There's a lot of things that we could try to do to help people feel like they're still getting, they still have a small group
Right.
connection.
Yeah, and we had, and I watching, as being as a member, I love, watching some of your town halls and some of the discussions that we've had, and it sounds like you just had one. It was a few weeks ago. We just had kind of a kids coming like town hall talking
Um,
about future plans, and this is where the direction we're heading in this, where you kind of started talking about more about the kids comic studio. But you said something funny where the acronym was ended up being the same. Didn't you
oh
have
yeah.
another? Yeah.
Oh, that was my mistake. Yes, yes. Originally, Kids Comic Studio was called Kids Comics Insider,
Okay.
and the course that I teach now with Rivka is called Kids Comics Intensive. And so
Okay.
they were both KCI, and it just made me tear my hair out. I was just, why did I do this? So we changed the name and we changed the branding. So it's Kids Comic Studio now, and I like that much better.
Right. And what merch? I mean, you hired you had one of your little illustrator connections there create an amazing website. Is there can you know can someone buy like a T-shirt with that with the
Oh
font
yeah, we
on
would
it?
love to do that. That
Yeah.
is in the future roadmap. It's not here yet. And keep in mind, this is not the website. This is our Mighty Network community.
Right.
So the website that we're working on will be live very, very soon. Very soon. It's gonna look completely different. It's super exciting. I can't wait. We're in the final stretches. But it's been a group effort. I call her my art director. Jade Vaughn has been working super hard on all the design elements, and she's doing an amazing job. And then Jonathan Saint Amant is the person who designed the fox character that you see there, our mascot. His name is Casey. Jonathan also designed a couple other mascot characters who kind of appear throughout the website. So yeah, it's definitely a group effort, and as we grow, my goal is to bring more and more people on to help with different things, because there's so much ingenuity and
Right.
energy in the community, and I know we're just scratching the surface of it. So I literally I cannot predict where we're going to go because I know people will bring their own ideas that are different than mine.
Right. And for, as we say, knock on wood, we're getting near the end of this pandemic we're in. And I love the fact that you have on the Kids Comic Unite, there's a members near you. You can click on the see. So, one of those questions was, when can we do another meetup? And I think you said, well, you can click on the button and you can see who's around you. And is there any, expectations as well as folks that you have to, through that Mighty Network platform of, to how do you monitor discussion boards and threads and stuff like that? How much of a job is that to make sure people kind of stay on task and people are kind of following, the guidelines?
For the most part, we've been really, really, really lucky, knock on wood, that people have been amazing. They are so professional and they cheer each other on. It's just really incredible. I think we do work hard to try to set that tone.
Right.
I pray that we that beautiful tone doesn't go away, as the community continues to grow. But that's one of my favorite things about it.
Right. I mean, it's amazing. And I got to say, there's being a part, just, passively being, being parts of different groups and discussion boards, as you're saying, there's that, what the old adage is that, what is it, that 10% of the people do 90% of the work or something along those lines. It just feels as though that there's so much activity happening in the Kids Comic United community. It's been frankly just an inspiration, just, looking at those discussion boards that's happening and just seeing all the good work that's coming out of
yeah. Really, really talented people. Amazing people. Yeah.
And so you got the website coming. You have your Kids Comic Studio, which is, as you mentioned, which is, only $39 a month, which I think is a fantastic deal because you're basically getting, as you say, access to so much knowledge, so much resources.
The thing I should mention about Studio that I didn't mention is our archive of past events. We have had amazing events. That's one of the things I'm excited about with the website is that we'll be able to categorize our replays a little bit better. In Mighty Networks, it's a little hard to organize things. So the website will allow us to organize our content a little bit better. And people will be able to, say I'm thinking I need to find, videos about marketing, or I need videos about technique or whatever. And we can tag things that way. So the replays are fantastic.
And is there access to with the kids Comic Studios of say PDF files of how to do this or how to do that? Or
a few of the presentations that we've done in the past, people have shared their PDFs and the PDF of their slides, and every time people do that, we always post those with the replay.
Right. Excellent. Cool. So like I said, amazing. It's so so uplifting to see some good things that have come out of the pandemic so far, and one of them is
a lot of good stuff has happened.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Janna. It was great talking to you. As I say, I've been getting emails from you for the last year or so it's fun to finally you have time to sit down and talk.
Thank you, Barney. That's really sweet. Yeah, I'm really glad that you reached out. I'm glad to know about the work that you're doing with this podcast. And I guess this is like an internet show / podcast. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. We're everywhere you can get your podcast. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's really great.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Janna, and look forward to continuing to follow along with Kids Comic United.
Yeah, if I can put in one plug, the one thing I would love people to do is sign up for the masterclass, because that is a free live event. And you have to join the community, then go to the events, and then you can sign up. And it's just going to be really, really fun. We have done this twice in the past, and every time it's like a party. So.
Yep, I signed up, and please everybody go to kidscomic.unite.com. It's all, you know, the common spelling for all three of those words all together. So kidscomic.unite.com. So please check it out. So perfect. Well, thank you very much, Janna, and have a and stay warm.
Okay, I will. You too.
So it seems like it seems apropos as like an agent that you're, and also somebody that's a huge supporter of children's, you know, children's and young adult graphic novels, that you actually have them behind you like you do now. So
Oh yeah, my messy office. I keep thinking I want to make it Instagram worthy, but I don't have time.
that is very Instagram worthy. I don't. Yeah. See. Yeah.